Mike here. We've got some new equipment on the farm. This is a John Deere Killefer Panbreaker. They're also known as subsoilers. This is model 3207. They made, I think, about 5 or 6 of these particular Panbreakers in the 40s and 50s. They were designed to be pulled by a tracked vehicle. They come in a variety of sizes that range from 12 inches deep all the way to 30 plus inches. As I mentioned, this one will go about 30 inches deep. Now this is designed to be pulled by equipment that is 55 horsepower or higher at the drawbar. My old Case 450 is 58 horsepower at the engine. We'll see if it can pull it. Now these Panbreakers or Panbusters or subsoilers, whatever you want to call them, are designed to be adjustable. There's a crank right here that can be used to adjust the depth of the shank in the back. And we'll show you that here in a little bit. There is also a lever right here that is used to release the shank. So when you're driving the loader or the tractor or whatever, you pull this lever, it'll release the shank down onto the ground. Then as you pull forward, it'll dig into the soil. There's also another rope and lever on this side, and that is designed to lift everything back up. And the way it works is it takes these locking bars, locks them into the hub on the wheel, and then as you drive forward, it acts like a fulcrum and pulls the shank up out of the ground. And we'll demonstrate all this here in a little bit. Now when we go to show you how to use this particular Panbreaker, this is new equipment to us, so we're learning along with you. And what we're going to do is we're going to make several passes in this area of our farm, and we're going to start at 12 inches deep and then work our way up to 30. All right, so this lever right here, if I pull it, it'll release the shank down onto the ground. We'll do that here in a little bit when we test it out. If I pull this lever, you can see it brings these arms on both sides forward. Those are locking arms. And those arms will actually lock into the hub. And then once it does that, as you drive forward, they'll act like a fulcrum and lift the subsoiler back out of the ground. Now this crank is used to raise and lower the depth on the subsoiler. So while we have it up out of the ground, we're going to crank it so that it's only about 12 inches deep for our first pass. Okay, so I was in the process of adjusting this so it wouldn't go so deep, and I'm noticing that the thread is actually pretty smashed up in here. So I'm gonna have to clean this up, and I'm gonna do that later so that we can lower or raise the shank so it doesn't go as deep. But we'll go ahead and lower it as much as we can and test it out. All right, I'm gonna pull this lever to go ahead and release the shank. Now we're gonna fire up the loader and see how she digs. All right, that actually did a lot better than I thought. I didn't think this case was going to really pull it that well. So we're actually going to lower it and see if we can get it all the way down to the 30 inches. You know what? I decided I'm just going to go halfway and we're going to run it. Then we'll see if we can get all the way to the 30 inches. But come around here and let me show you what it did. So you can see the shank started to go in the ground right there, and then it got deep pretty quickly, and then it pulled very well the whole length. We probably went about 80-90 feet. Now if you look back this way, you'll see that I drove over what we had done, so it's hard to tell. So on this pass, I'm going to pull all the way forward, and we're going to stop, and we'll go back and look at how it did. All right, so we got down to there on the shank. So it had a hard time pulling it. If I had hit any rocks or roots at all, I think it would have just stopped. So that is definitely the limit, I think, of what the Case 450 can do right here. Now this area is mostly clay. It's actually an area where the previous landowner pushed a lot of soil and put it here. It's probably the softest ground that we've got on the property. So if I were to use this elsewhere where we have a true hard pan, or any rocks or stumps or roots, it's gonna struggle. So I definitely need a bigger machine to pull something this big. But we'll just use it the way we can, and we'll raise up the shank a little bit and get some good use out of it. Now let's go look and see how the subsoiler did. So what the subsoiler is doing is cutting a deep trench through the soil, but it's also lifting the soil. That's why you can see this large hump right here. So we'll pull back some of this, and you can see I've got a pretty good channel there. As I mentioned, I mean, there's a few rocks, but it's mostly this clay. So what this really does is help with compaction on your soil, and we're gonna see if we can use it to get more water infiltrating onto our property. Right now we've got some pretty steep slopes and the water just sheds right off. So we're gonna use the subsoiler on contour. So as the water comes downhill, it'll hit one of these trenches and sink down into the soil instead of running off of our farm. So we're gonna use this subsoiler on half of this area as a little test bed. I'll rip it a few more times and we'll leave that half of it the same. And then what I plan on doing is planting the same grass seed over the entire area, and we're gonna see how big of a difference this makes and how the grass grows. So we've ripped it a few times. I'm still getting used to using heavy equipment and subsoilers. This is all new to me. So you can see I pulled the lever a little too early on some of these, so that's why they're a lot shorter. So I'll use this as a practice area for a little bit before we start using it on contour on our farm. So like and subscribe if you want to join me as I learn how to use heavy equipment and restore our land.